Welcome to the Working Mumma Podcast, the show where we have the honest, unfiltered conversations about navigating work, motherhood, identity, and everything in between. Have you ever returned from parental leave and thought, who am I anymore? Have you found yourself standing in your old office, sitting in your old role, but feeling like a completely different person wearing someone else's clothes? That sense of disorientation, that identity shift, that quiet grief of who you were before. You know what? It has a name. And once you know that name, everything else makes sense. Trust me, when I first heard this word, it was like a light bulb that went off. It was amazing. And today on the podcast, I'm joined by Amanda Jackson, the founder of Motherhood and Matrescence, author of the book by the same name, mum of 3 boys, and someone who has dedicated her career to helping women understand and navigate the profound transformation of becoming a mum. Today, we are deep diving into matrescence. Yes, this is the word, the process of becoming a mum. We're talking about the identity shift that hits you when you return to work, the invisible loads that we're all carrying, what actually happens to your brain. Spoiler, it's not a deficit, it's instead an upgrade, and the practical steps that you can take to come back to yourself. Whether you're currently on parental leave, freshly back at work, or a few years in and still wondering when you're going to feel like your old self again, this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome, Amanda, to the Working Mumma Podcast. How's your day going so far?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me. This is lovely to be with you today.
I can't wait to get into it. But before we do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career journey to date?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of Motherhood and Matrescence and also an author of a book by the same name. I'm a mum of 3 boys, and originally I started actually working out in corrective services and then youth work, and then went into corporate for a little bit, and then came to return to my academic roots, which is looking at, I guess, women's experience in society. So sociology, psychology. And my thesis was in the regulation of women's bodies. So it feels full circle to now return to this work after having kids.
Oh, it's amazing. So we're going to talk all things identity today, and definitely around the topic of matrescence, which is a topic and a word that I know that not everyone actually knows about. There's a lot that's also being said at the moment to get into it. So let's just start from the top. Amanda, what is the word matrescence? What does it mean? And why have we really never heard too much of it? Because matrescence, if you type it in, it's actually not in the dictionary.
Yes, correct. There's I think one online dictionary that has it, and that's about it. It's always in my spell check constantly. So you're right, we haven't heard about it, even though the term was coined in 1973. We're only just hearing about it now. And in short, it's the process of becoming a mum. I guess the longer definition would be to say that it's a normal developmental transition that women go through every time they become mum. So it's not just with our first child, it's every time. And it really doesn't matter how we become a mum, we're going to go through matrescence because it's a rite of passage that belongs to all mums.
We know about adolescence and the journey of becoming a teenager. And as you just said about the rite of passage, become a mum is matrescence. What kind of changes and that do we go through that identity of becoming a mum and in that journey? Like, what does it mean? And there's so much that I know that we have on the podcast that talks about the identity shift. And often I'll then say, well, that's matrescence. Like, what is the journey of matrescence and what goes into the makeup of it?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned adolescence because quite often when I work with mums of teens, they feel quite lost and think, oh, I don't know what they're going through or what to do. But when you look at matrescence and overlay it with adolescence, there's so many similarities. And really, we're looking at physical changes, social changes, psychological, emotional changes, and the expectations that come with each transition are huge as well. We're looking at political change as well that we go through, and spiritual change in both of these transitions. So they actually overlay quite neatly. And really, when you're looking at both of these, everything within us and everything around us is changing at the same time during these transitions. It's massive.
And what really catches women off guard, and what are some of the signs that you can go, yeah, this is matrescence? And because I know there's so many shifts as a new mum, we're trying to work out how to actually care for this new child. Meanwhile, ourselves, we're going through this whole identity shift of matrescence. Like, what are some of those real telltale signs and going, yep, okay, that's all right, this is normal, or this is just some of the journey of going through matrescence? Because what is the journey of matrescence?
I would answer that question by explaining to women the 3 stages of matrescence. So the first one is separation. So that's the stage where we're starting to step away from our roles and routines and things like that. For example, when we're pregnant, maybe we're not socializing as much. Maybe we're feeling like we want to nest or stay at home and rest, things like that. That's just one example. And then the second stage, which is probably my favorite, is liminality. And in that stage is where we can really play with our identity, our behavior, checking out different ways of doing things as a mum. And then the third stage is integration. So we're starting to look at role models at work or in the community and really going, okay, how does this work for me as a mum? What's working? What's not? And if you know about those 3 main stages, then it's much easier to feel as though you know what's happening to you. It's not just this strange thing that's suddenly occurring in life. But those stages really do help women understand where they're at in the process. And it's not just those stages happen once, they rinse and repeat over and over with every different change we're going through. So physically, socially, emotionally, there's a lot going on. You could think about it as like those spinning plates all going at once.
I think that's a good analogy. I think a lot of mums would actually feel that the plates are certainly spinning all at the same time.
Yeah.
Why do women really feel during this journey that they've lost themselves, that they wonder, well, who am I? They sort of going through a lot of self-doubt, as you're saying, like the identity shift and the different stages. But I know a lot of women going, I don't know who I am anymore. And do I have a real purpose, or what is that purpose? And do a bit of reevaluation on their lives. What is it about matrescence that probably encourages to go through this process?
I agree with you. So many women do feel like, oh, who am I now that I'm a mum? Because we've either had to step away from parts of our life just because there's not time or there's not as much flexibility, and then working out, well, who am I now as a mum? Because really having kids does change everything, and it can change us overnight. We very much go from I am me to we and us now, and then working out who we are is integrating a whole nother identity and someone else's entire world into ours. But I think there's a big part of that sense of losing ourselves is because, one, we do start separating from who we were, but then also there's no support around matrescence. It's just expected that we will be able to transition straight into being a mum, and without support, I think that's a big reason why a lot of women feel lost, because we don't have an understanding of what's going on within us, that our brain is changing, our body is changing, socially, all those changes. We're just not, there just hasn't been the education around that. But I think another reason why we feel lost, and you tapped on it before when you said a sense of purpose, is there's just an expectation that when we're mums that we'll be completely fulfilled and that will be everything, and that we'll love every minute of it. So I think the other reason why mums also feel lost is that their work is invisible. A lot of the mothering is done in isolation. And then when, as the default caregivers are doing that role, a lot of our work is invisible. So the logistical loads, things like that, they're all invisible. The domestic work, it's all invisible. And so that can feel like we are lost because the work that we're doing isn't seen or valued. And then with mothering, it's just expected that because we're a woman and we've become a mother, that we will be able to do that work. It's not seen as this massive skill set that we're learning, and that we're bringing a whole new skill set into our lives and constantly learning. But I think that can lead to women, feeling invisible.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And I know that I can resonate a lot with that. So first of all, there's a lot that I want to unpack from that response. Number one, what would good support, and I say good in inverted commas, how can we improve, actually I should reframe this. How can we improve the support for women around matrescence, particularly around this identity shift? There's so much focus as well on what's your birth plan? Where are you going to go for the hospital? There's very little conversation about, did you know about matrescence? Are you prepared for your identity shift after you've become a mum? It's never really spoken about.
Yes, that is a great question as well, because we can spend a lot of time defining the problem, but then, okay, what is the answer? One, I think, is education. Building education into, our prenatal and postnatal classes would be huge. And just what I have seen recently in working with mums in groups is just being with other women and unpacking matrescence and how becoming a mum has changed us in different ways is incredibly nourishing, because it brings a sense of normalization to say, me too, I went through that too, or I didn't feel that at all, but now I understand my friend who has gone through, a completely different experience. So being able to have a space to share our stories and reflect. How many times does a mum get even asked, how has becoming a mum changed you, or how are you finding a mum? It's usually, how are the kids? How's the baby? Things like that. It's very child-centric, which is lovely as well, but also making time to ask, how are you feeling? How's your matrescence? How have you changed? And really giving a woman space to think about and reflect on those changes. And then I think we can support women's matrescence journey in the workplace as well, just by not expecting that she's going to come back and be exactly the same person. We can't go back.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that's really great around providing that support. And you're so right that when we go and see a new mum, it's always like, how's it sleeping? How's it feeding? And very little attention is actually paid to the mother. And I like what you say around the return to work, because also I think in terms of women's identities, just before, I often say about transitioning back into work, that's when they start to go through, my goodness, I'm not the same person I was before I went on parental leave as to what I am now returning. And they suddenly start to go through this, who am I? Questioning and reflection. And when you realize, and they're going, why have I changed? Why am I feeling so different? But then really in turn, they've gone through this matrescence journey and then going, okay, who am I? And rather than probably maybe 6 to 12 months down the track, they're going, who am I? I've got this identity shift as I go back into workplace. So what can women do that are going through that journey to go, okay, as you say, that support back as well from employers as women are transitioning, because they aren't the same person?
Yeah, they're definitely not. I do think the biggest one is a space for reflection. So having someone that understands matrescence and can then support them in that. Because in context of returning to work, I mean, it can be overnight that our priorities changed. My plan was I was going to have my son and I was going to be back at work in 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, no, I can't do that. This isn't going to happen the same way. So, our priorities can really change overnight, and knowing that that's okay when our priorities do change, how we're going to feel as a mum is so unexpected, and unexpected at every stage too. In the work I do with mums of teens, a lot of them say, my children are much more independent, but actually I want to pull back on work now and be available to them when they're there. So I think just being open to breaking the norms, really. And the other thing I think for women to be able to support themselves through is just to have a look at the expectations that surround them and what they're carrying. Because when we look at matrescence, we really need to look at the culture that we're living in and the expectations of the society, the workplace, the family, the home that we live in, to see, how is my matrescence impacted by the expectations of those around me and the expectations I place on myself to be in inverted commas when I say this, a good mum. Really just taking time to unpack all of that, because certainly lowering those expectations or putting ones down that don't belong to us will be the most liberating gift a woman can give herself.
Yeah, there's certainly so much in that as well, because so much of societal expectations that we have of what, and I say as well, inverted commas, should be doing, which is really built up over hundreds of years of, the woman's role traditionally was about being a mother and being childbearing and the like, whereas now I think it's 78% of Australian parents actually live in a dual income household. So it's only natural that, probably 4 out of 5 mums will actually go back to work at some stage. So that does change it around. And as you were saying earlier, around that invisible load, there's a lot of women that do experience burnout, also going, oh my goodness, how can I do that? Because of A, those societal expectations, as you say, but also then B, the invisible load of all the work that they've been doing, or even also being adding on to whilst they've been on parental leave. And now they're going back to work going, how am I going to do all this?
Yes, exactly. And I think that, oh my God, how am I going to do this is a really important question, because women then assume the responsibility, well, most times the responsibility of being the default caregiver and then going back to work. And especially when it's in a part-time capacity, even the mums I talk to that are in part-time capacity, they're actually doing a lot of work behind the scenes to catch up as well, to make that part-time work for them. And some are taking work that is much, I guess, lower than their qualifications, just to be able to work school hours and fit in around kids. So it's a huge sacrifice, I guess, that women will make, and changes that we'll make to try and make it work. But those invisible loads are probably the ones I would be leaning into to have a really good look at, because when you look at what expectations and roles mums are carrying, it's not actually really possible to carry all of those things and then work a full-time load. We look at the logistical loads, the domestic loads. I mean, we're all well aware of the cognitive or mental load, and then the pressure to always be available. So to be available to flex and be there for our kids if they need them, but also being available at work at the same time is huge.
If we were going to go through that reflection process, as what you said, it's really important. What would be some steps or some things that we could do to actually go, okay, I'm going to step back and reflect about my matrescence journey? What would we do?
Okay. So I like to start back a little further in pregnancy and say, what were your expectations for yourself as a mum? And really digging into what sort of mum did you expect you would be? And then what kind of mum are you? And really looking at that, saying, okay, and then
Great question.
when there's a difference between the two, why is that? And do you still want that version that you first envisaged? Because I think a lot of us are very naive in that we're sold this image that being a mum will just be something that will really neatly integrate with our to-do list, and it's most certainly not. So I would go back and be reflecting on that and really having a look and saying, okay, what is important to me as a mum? The legacy that I want to create as a mum, what I want to create for my kids, what parts of me do I want my kids to know? Because a lot of the times those loads that we're carrying are so heavy that we don't actually get to show our kids that when we're trying to be this, good mother 1.0. They see a very different version of us. And it's probably not the version that we want to give them when we really tap into, okay, what parts of me, do I want my kids to know and see? And that's a huge gift for our kids, to know us really deeply, not just see us navigating those loads. So, I mean, that's a very short, condensed version. But really, when you start unpacking it over a longer time, it's much more achievable to be able to give ourselves that gift.
I think there are actually two really powerful questions to actually reflect on what kind of mum do I want to be, and what I thought I would be, and where are you at? I think they are very probably when you first think about it, yeah, they're a simple question, but there is so much that even as you're saying that, I'm going ping, ping, ping of all the things even in my own head.
Yeah. And when our kids are old enough, like my poor kids, I make them do this survey every year, but asking them things like, what do you enjoy doing most with me? What do you enjoy about me being your mum? Things like I might say, is there anything I do that embarrass you? When they're old enough to ask them these, questions. And really, I think as mums, we're so hard on ourselves and facing guilt so often and thinking, I'm not doing enough, or I need to do more, or I'm not enough, can be what's on replay in our minds. When you ask your kids, it is actually so incredibly beautiful, the answers that they get, that they'll give you. And doing having those questions and having their reflection is really quite inspiring and eye-opening, I guess, as to what fulfills them.
I think as well, yeah, like we've got our own internal voice. And as what you say, society's expectations about the role of a mother. I know recently I asked my son, because we talk about, he goes, I'd love to do podcasting like you or something. Like we'll talk about it and we joke around. And I said, I'd love to ask you a question. And I said, what would you do? What do you think about mummy working? And I said, do you like it or not? And he goes, yeah, I like it because then we get to do stuff. And this is from a 5-year-old, very simplistically.
Yeah.
And it was really nice because he didn't say, no, mum, I don't like you working. And I was like, okay, because then society's expectations at times make me guilty for working. But then from him, maybe it's also the stories that I tell him of, look, mummy's working so we can do X, Y, Z. Then he goes, no, I like this. And I'm going, okay, so society has one view. My son has a very different view. So I love that you're asking the questions.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that, because it really brings me to something that a point that I try and hone in on all the time is there's all this noise around us. There's all these expectations, and every environment we go into, different expectations. But at the end of the day, who are we mothering for? It's two people. One is us and one is our kids. And the fact that we then get to say, am I okay with the way I'm mothering? And are my kids okay with the way I'm mothering? Yes. Then, it really helps just say, who am I mothering for? And dial down that external noise.
I love that. I always say do what is best for you and your family, because there's so much like on social media and you hear it of, you could do all of these things. But I love that. There's you do you for you and your family.
Yes, exactly. And so many expectations. It's really going, okay, does that even belong to me, or is that the generation before me? Do I want to pick that up? No, probably not.
So if we don't want to listen to, I guess, society and all, as you say, there's all these expectations and, the type of mother that you want to be, how do we stay true to ourselves? So if we sort of do that exercise and go, well, I'm not necessarily where I'm at, this is where I want to be. I don't necessarily want to follow the expectations around certain topics. How do we block out some of that noise and certainly stay true to who we are and want to be?
I guess it would be knowing that in the moment when you are parenting, and this happens for a lot of women parenting in public situations, is that they feel that they're like on stage, that they're being observed. And then that's when we start parenting for the audience. But for most women that I work with, especially when they come away, they say, reflecting on those moments, they're not parenting in line with their own values, that it's the way that they've parented is maybe disconnected from, they've disconnected from their kids in that moment. So I guess it's just taking the time to say, when we don't parent in a way that suits us and our children, and we're not meeting both of those needs, how do we feel? Because each time we reflect on that, it's then leading us more towards going, okay, now I have to, I've had this rupture and I have to repair with my child for that. But really going back and reflecting on those times where we have parented to meet someone else's expectations. Is it working for us? Probably not. Maybe in the short term, because we want them to see us as a good mum. But in the long term, most women will be reflecting, going, that actually doesn't work. Like you were saying, for me and my family, that's not working. And that's not to say that it's easy, though. It's really not. But it's about choosing, am I going to meet everyone else's needs, or am I going to meet mine? Am I and my child. And it's a choice that we make over and over and over again every day, different situations.
Yeah, 100%. And so now when we go back to a conversation we were having just a little time ago about the return to work, there's obviously a lot that we go through, but also then our managers and our organizations. How can we navigate that, I guess, individually? And then also, second to that, how can organizations support women more about that return back into the workplace? I guess also recognizing that they've also gone through matrescence and an identity shift. They haven't been on the long holiday, as sometimes what they're referred to. And they are actually, they have birthed or got a new child, that there is an expectation they should be a different person.
Yes. And a huge question. I'm just like, oh, how long do we have to unpack this? So
I know. I love this part. We get to the juicy, good stuff.
yeah. Okay. So I think really, firstly, as a society, we're a long way off it, but really valuing mothering and the work that we're doing while we're on mat leave, or on, days that we're working part-time. When we're home, we're working hard. It's not a day off. It's a different kind of work, and the emotional load and everything that goes with that is huge. From an organisation point of view, a woman coming back after mat leave, it's going to be different depending on where each woman is in her journey and her experiences and her needs and her hopes for work. And I think tapping into all of those things is probably really important, instead of just, oh, you're back, desk chair, off you go, you'll be fine. Really checking in and saying, okay, do we need to transition back in slowly? What do you hope? Do you want to check in another month or 2 months just to see how you're traveling? So really, I guess, a system that first has awareness that a woman is going to still be going through a large transition. Just because she's back at work doesn't mean, oh, matrescence is over either. Oh, that's a continuous evolution. But really just checking in with her. And as well for women, if they're finding that their priorities have changed, being hopefully in a workplace that values that their ideas and goals are changing as well, to be able to go to a manager and say, hey, I'm wondering if I can tweak my role, or exploring other options, even PD, to start learning different things, because becoming a mother really ignites different passions in us. Like the amount of mums that I see involved in social projects, you can see that it ignites all these different wants for our community, for our family. So leveraging that in an organization and saying, well, what are you passionate about now? Is it the same? Is it different? But that can be a constant process for an organization to do annually, even with the whole team.
Yeah, certainly so powerful. And sometimes as well, a break away from work can actually make you pause and reflect and go, oh, do I actually enjoy that work? And maybe I want to pivot or do something different as well. So yeah, during that journey, it's certainly two-sided. It's not just about someone returning necessarily always back to the same role, but respecting who they've now becoming.
Absolutely. And that step away from work, and I think a different pace almost with mothering, can make you question, is it productivity? Is that my value anymore? Like, is that what I value? Or is it, connectedness? Obviously every woman's different, but really I think it gives us a chance to see the culture that we are parenting within. Like, are we still focused on a capitalist productive society, or do we want to create something different? Is there some change that we feel inspired to bring? I think it opens so many questions as to how we've shifted emotionally and socially, really.
Why does it, I guess, make us have this? Obviously, we're going through a lot emotionally, physically, and that as a new mum, but why is it, I guess, making us really question all facets of our life, of not only who we are, of an identity, but, from a work perspective? What is it about the matrescence journey that makes us probably question so much of our lives?
I think because we go through this massive evolution, like everything changes at once. So everything internally, including us neurologically. So everything changing all at once, like within us and then around us, when we're talking about those social expectations. When everything is changing at once, I I think it makes us question things, and we question ourselves incredibly deeply, but then looking inwards and saying, okay, how have I changed? But then outwards. But really, there's a lot of talk about matrescence being very similar to a spiritual evolution. And I can certainly see that it's just a whirlwind of accumulated changes. And I don't think you can really ignore the way that when you become a mum that you do see the world very differently. Suddenly, I think for women, there's glass ceilings and sticky floors in the workplace can become very, very real. And seeing then how the women before us and going, oh my gosh, I never, the mums that we see in the workplace, now I understand what she was going through. Like you were saying, I think it brings to the forefront of, oh, that wasn't just a day off at home, or it wasn't just a holiday for mat leave. It really changes our perspective of other people and brings a very different sense of connectedness to other people as well.
Definitely. I've had many a person say to me, you're so lucky you get a day off with your kids. And I'm going, trust me, I go back to work for a break.
Yes, there's like the pause between two breaths when we're at work, isn't there?
Yeah. And you're going, this is not like a luxury day off. Even today, yes, I'm doing some podcasts, but I spent this morning shopping because Easter's around the corner. We're recording this the Monday before Easter. And I'm just going, I've got to buy all the Easter eggs. And what are we doing? So there's even a mental load that you're carrying. Even though you're not physically working, you're still doing other invisible labor.
Absolutely. And you know what's really interesting is when you ask women, okay, can you just put down everything that's on your mind, everything that's on your plate, and they write down all of those like emotional logistics and the mental loads, things like that. When they look at what they're carrying, they're like, oh, that's why I feel a bit overwhelmed. It can be really validating actually to get it all on paper.
100%. And so is there anything that dads go through? So as we're talking about the workplace, did dads go anything similar to matrescence?
Yes. So they call it Patressence, and a lot of similarities to matrescence. There's some beautiful literature by Winnie Orchard, an Australian neuroscientist, who talks about the brain changes that dads go through as well, determined by their level of actual caregiving. So that's really interesting to have a look at. There's definitely changes for dads. The feedback I've had from the masterclass for mums that I've just been running is from the mum saying, can you do this with my partner now too? Because they needing that support to understand their identity shift as well, and how they've changed since becoming a dad, and the pressures that they feel. It's different, obviously, from the pressures women feel. But yes, definitely there for dads and as a couple. Huge changes that they'll go through as well.
Yeah. And I guess it's probably pretty important to actually talk about it and not try and bury it under the hatchet and, oh, what's this? Oh, no, we're just going to keep going.
Hugely, just to acknowledge it first, to bring awareness to it, and then, as a couple, to be able to even talk about, okay, well, I didn't experience this, but I did, and to try and understand each other rather than often for couples, it can devolve into more a competitive, well, I've got this that I'm carrying, instead of what loads are we carrying as a family and how can we better support each other and bring in support or let go of some expectations maybe to really look at nourishing themselves as a family unit.
As women are returning back into work, they've obviously got a new identity, a new person who they are. How have they maybe shifted of their brain and this like the bit of psychology around who they are that makes them up as a person?
Okay, there is some beautiful research by Dr. Jodie Pulaski. She's the author of Mummy Brain. So that would be a really interesting read. And I mentioned Dr. Winnie Orchard before. So they do some research on how the brain changes when we become a mum. And it's fascinating research. A lot of the time women can say, oh, I'm experiencing mummy brain. And we think the maternal brain is in deficit. When you look at their research, it's really, I guess, illuminating this idea that it's not in deficit, it's upgrading, and that we need care and to be nurtured during this time, and the overwhelm that stresses can occur in this time, but really we need to be acknowledging how our brain changes and being aware of that I think also a big thing we were talking before about confidence going back to work and the psychological change shifting us from this feeling of, yeah, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing in my career, and suddenly becoming uncertain really has a lot to do with when we're looking at how are we going to mother and carry all of these loads. It makes sense that we start to feel this uncertainty of actually, can I be present 100% over here with my family? And can I be present 100% at work how I was before I left for mat leave? That's for sure going to bring a sense of uncertainty in ourselves and thinking, can I do this? So, yeah, I would say it's a combination of all of those things together.
There's so much into it as well. And is it worth just embracing matrescence? We can't really fight it and say, no, it's not happening, can we?
I don't think so. I think the more that we would try and stay the same and be who we were before becoming a mum, I think we're probably setting ourselves up for failure because it's just not feasible. We live in this beautiful mutuality with our children. And I look at it and think when you know the stages, you really can understand yourself better and have a better level of self-awareness. But I wouldn't want to push matrescence down or not acknowledge it either, because as part of it can be really brutal, these changes, and we can grieve past versions of ourselves or having to shelve our dreams for a little while on some things. It's actually this incredibly fertile area in our life for growing new passions and, new connections with people. I definitely wouldn't want to fight it to the point of suppressing the change. There's so much beauty in who we become once we become a mum, and really embracing that and saying, actually, I am going to grow into a whole new person. I'm going to need support, but this is going to be an adventure.
No, that's so special. And thank you so much for saying it. Certainly embrace it. As scary as going through this journey might be, embrace the process, but also don't be afraid to reach help. As what you said, there are now many, many experts around that understand matrescence. There is also a great campaign going on at the moment by Peanut over in the US to actually add matrescence to the dictionary. So hopefully that when you write the word, it actually won't be underlined if you write it in MS Word at the moment. Hopefully it will actually be in the dictionary, acknowledged as a word, acknowledging the transformation that literally billions of women have gone through and questioned themselves over, but now can feel validated and seen and go, that's why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling.
Absolutely. And not just for new mums, looking at mums across the lifespan, go, oh, this makes sense. This is where I'm at. I now understand, and now I can build appropriate support or have more reflection time, just different things. But yes, the first step is looking at, okay, what's happening to me and the expectations around us while we're experiencing that.
Because
Yeah,
it doesn't go for just a couple of years, does it? It goes for the whole mothering journey, doesn't it?
I definitely believe so. I mean, it's interesting whether there'll be research, hopefully starting to come about this. I would love to see it for mums of teens. Certainly they're a very under-supported group who it's just assumed will have it all together, either by the 6-week mark or by the time our kids go to school. And so parents of teens definitely face that as well, this expectation that they'll just have it all together. But that's another huge part of matrescence, is supporting someone else in their, a teenager through their own evolution and going through ours alongside them. Really beautiful, but definitely deserving of much more research as to how that impacts mums as well.
Yeah, because how we show up as mums certainly changes. I know just in my own experience of being a new mum, then going into the childcare days and then having a child start in primary school, and I haven't got to secondary school yet, but it's interesting to see the changes not only in the children, but also in myself and my identity and my community, as what you said, and seeking help. So it's this constant evolution, but also evolution of, as what you were saying earlier, around friendships and identity and how you do things. You're constantly learning and growing throughout the whole process. It's not just a set and forget, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on. And I'm really excited by Matrescence with the campaign that went viral. Michelle Battersby did an amazing job bringing that together. I really do hope this is the start of seeding change across communities and, like we were talking about before in that prenatal and postnatal care as well, really setting the foundation strong at the beginning.
Yeah, certainly that would be the way. So, what are some things that you think, Amanda, like maybe a couple of things that out of today or even for mums that are listening that you would love that they could action, they could do today from around matrescence and from our chat?
Okay. I probably look at redefining what success means, even if this is an annual reflection that you give yourself. So redefining what does success mean because it changes in every stage of our mothering. And then it might even be that you look at one ritual that you can do for yourself every day, whether it's stepping outside the office and having a cup of tea by yourself. So you've got those 5 minutes, something really simple, putting moisturizer on your face by yourself, doesn't matter. It's the ritual of having a moment for yourself or doing something you like, going for a walk. It doesn't matter, one thing each day just for you. And then I think building in time to have a ritual with your kids as well, depending on the stage, whether it's reading a book together at night, whether it's a check-in, whatever it is, it depends on the age of your kids, but one thing for you and one thing for you with them. Really important because I think that supports our independence as a woman and our role as a mum as well. And just building from there as we go and have more flexibility and freedom in our journey.
And is there any final words that you want to say or debunk any myths or anything you'd like people to know around the topic of matrescence that we may not have already covered today?
Great question. I really would say in supporting yourself through matrescence is taking time to understand it, whether you read about it, whether you listen to a podcast. It doesn't just learning about the changes that we go through as a mum. I mean, we're very well versed as mums in the changes that our kids go through at each stage, right from the beginning. But taking time to learn about that for yourself and the changes that you go through and really recognizing that you're already a good mum. But now the challenge is taking time to think about what you want and asking yourself each day, what do I need in this season? And just finding little ways to make those changes happen.
Amazing. Great tips for everyone to take on after today and also great advice. So, Amanda, what do you do to fill your cup and those rituals every day for yourself?
So my everyday one would be sneaking away for a cup of coffee. Sometimes I've had to get really creative. If I've got a little one at home, it might be making a cup of coffee and then going and saying, okay, we're going to play hide and seek. And I'll tuck it into a cupboard and have my coffee. It really depends. You have to get creative. Yeah. Yeah, that for me is a big one. And sometimes if I'm really lucky, that's the time when I do a brain dump and just get everything out. I feel much lighter after it. Otherwise, for me, I love being in my garden. That's that's a bit of my self-care. And with my kids, I just make sure that we have time to do a little bit because I have 3 boys, so it can be really tricky. But just finding that little bit of time each day with them, whether it's a conversation, sitting down for a meal together, but just something where we have a connection. And I usually ask them the same questions, so it builds a little bit of a ritual in there as well.
And what are those questions you ask them?
Yeah, so I might ask them something like some of the questions are, what's something you did today for someone else? When did you find yourself smiling? Just little things so that we can, and we'll have like I have a few questions on rotation, but just little things so I can tap into their day, or might be things like, is there any time that you needed my support today? Things like that. So yeah, just really trying to check into what's happening in their world, I guess.
Amazing. And that's so important, no matter how young or old they are. So thank you so much for this chat today, Amanda, around matrescence, and that I love matrescence and just the concept. I remember it being a real light bulb moment in my motherhood journey when I actually learnt about it. And it's, for me, been so transformational and really validating. So that was my aim today, is just to help share and get more people aware of what the topic is. So look, thank you so much for your time. How can people connect with you and find out more?
Well, my book is Motherhood and Matrescence, and so are my socials and my website. So that's a few different. You can book bespoke one-on-ones on there, or have a look at the programs. There's some freebies as well on my website. But I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you today, and really just the ability to be able to talk about matrescence and advocate for its awareness and integration into our working and home lives is such a privilege. So thank you.
My pleasure. Well, thank you so much. It's been such an engaging and interesting chat. So thank you so much again. It's been great.